Hello and welcome back to the Auto Loons channel. We are back with some more Hot Wheels 1:64 diecast models. This time again we have some really old collectibles, almost 20 years old, motorsport icons of that time. On our left we have the Riley&Scott Mark III, on our right we have the Ferrari 333 SP, and in the middle we have the Panoz Roadster. Well, these two cars on the sides are year 2000 first edition models, whereas the middle one, the Panoz, is a 2001 first edition model. The story behind all three of them were they were all developed around the same time for the Le Mans prototype class, rather known as LMP. We'll be starting off with the Riley&Scott Mark III. Now this little gem here is finished in a very nice metallic blue. Not a lot reading on the underside. See its name there. This was an Le Mans prototype developed by Bob Riley, Bill Riley, and Mark Scott. Hence Riley for the two brothers, I guess, and Scott for Mark Scott. It is quite an extreme open race car design. The aero elements are, on display are not that detailed, but they're better than stickers. They're proper indents into the sides of the toy, with louvers here, a couple of branding, sticker race branding, and on the back the hood scoop, the main engine hood scoop, head scoop there, the extremely aggressive and front extending splitter, the massive wing. These cars were really small and really light, because the whole point was to make it light and as fast as possible. So this particular model, the Riley&Scott, that is the Mark III, it started building it in around 1993, and by the time it was finished, they still didn't have any buyers by the time it was 1994. Then it was redesigned for 1995 season. The chassis had steel tube frame with carbon fiber panels, so you can see protection part here is probably tubular steel and under the carbon fiber skin. So it is light but very sturdy. The engine bay is quite a large section of this design, so it's big enough for various naturally aspirated engines, especially the American V8s that were being raced around that time. So this is not a manufacturer's car as such. It was a race car manufacturer who had designed this for different teams to use with different engines, whether they be customer teams or even probably sell it as a base development model to factory teams. So various independent racing teams, you fitted it with a bunch of American V8s, like a Ford V8, a Chevy V8, or even a Cadillac V8. This particular design, with the carbon fiber and Kevlar bodywork, was developed by an aircraft designer by the name of John ROCZ. I'm probably butchering the name here. And a total of 17 were built from 1995 to 1998. The Riley&Scott is the chassis that other teams used by putting a big V8 in here and a tough guy in here to race in Le Mans and various WEC championships between 95 to 98, and around 17 of them were built in that time period. And back then, the average cost per chassis was around $285,000. So it had the steering, the suspension from Riley&Scott. Obviously you could make aero mods as requested by the track, but they've done a lot of research and time into this car. So yeah, that's the first one. And as a model also, it's very well defined. I prefer these kind of tail lamp designs over the new sticker stuff. Sticker stuff just feels like less effort. This seems like they had to put an effort to stamp the metal with something. Again, these have also been all well played with, as I've had them for almost 20 years now when I was a kid. So I'm surprised, I'm quite happy that I kept them all in decent condition. That's the number one Riley&Scott Mark III. Moving on to its sort of competitor, or rather the car and rather its arch rival, because this actually raced somewhere around the same time while this was under development. So this is the Ferrari 333 SP, SP standing for Sports Prototype. The chassis was originally designed and developed by Dallara. They still make some of the world's most renowned race car chassis across various motorsport formats, including Formula 2. I think they also have hand in some LMP class chassis today. But as you can tell, these two are definitely from the same era of racing. Of course, the Ferrari design seems less aerocentric than the Riley&Scott design, but don't let that fool you. This was the car to beat. So the big story with this one was that the 333 SP marked the return of Ferrari to that kind of format after an absence of 20 years. So if I remember correctly, after they lost to Ford in '66, they pretty much kind of opted out of like serious WEC and Le Mans racing. Again, rear mid-mounted, driver in the front, keep the weight balance, stream arrow, lures, massive wing, a bit of a shark fin aerodynamic element here, slimmer wing probably to kind of let the air escape more easily through here. Very different sort of lower, you could say, underbody aero design. Again, not that detailed, but perhaps, like race cars, they just have as simple of an underside as possible to let the air just slip through it. And again, an aggressive front spoiler, not as far extending as the Riley&Scott Mark III, but still definitely proper race car stuff. So this particular model, the 333 SP, used the 1990 Ferrari F1 engine, I think the 641, which was then modified to be a 4-liter V12, which produced around 641 horsepower. So this car made its racing debut in 1994 in the IMSA GT Championship, which was you could say the lead endurance racing for championship of that time. They had a few successes in terms of wins, podiums, and it was consistent enough to win the Makes Championship in 1995. But that was around the time when this was under development and was starting to get picked up by more and more teams with better engines, and it was better developed. So 1994 debut year, 1995 I think they sold the first one. By around 1997, this was beating the hell out of this. So you could say this was the one to beat, and this was the one that eventually got to beat it with an American V8 of some nature I don't exactly recall. So these two are from the same era, where this one was built, it did well, this one was built to beat this one. And then we move to Panoz, which has an interesting history because it kind of links back to our previous video where we had the GT1 race cars. So Panoz used to make a GT1 version of the Esperante model that they had. I don't know much about it except that once I had the first gen Xbox, I played a couple of games which had a Panoz Esperante in the game. Anyway, so Panoz has been in the racing game for a while. And once the GT1 class was eliminated and they were bringing back the Le Mans prototype class, Panoz said, you know what, we'll take part in it. And they wanted to win at Le Mans. But they couldn't do it with the GT1 because that class was discontinued. So they built a brand new Roadster, and this was the prototype, built to compete in Le Mans in 1999. So unlike these two, which have sort of a rear mid-mounted engine, Panoz stuck with their formula with Esperante, where they put the engine in front of the driver. So that's why it has its driver is positioned that far back. Now the swing wasn't originally this angled, as you can see. You can see here that I basically snapped it. So of the two ones, the one that broke was this one. I'm feeling like maybe I must have accidentally stepped on it at some point, or one of my parents did. You look at all these aero elements sort of hammered into this model. I found this one of the best models of the three, because it just stood out so much compared to those two, because those two were similar. One was a Ferrari, one was not. That was it. This just looked so different, so much cooler, with the massive front engine layout, the vents here, the angry hood. Look at how much the diffuser sticks out from the front. Very clearly different sized wheels, massive wing when it was not broken, and a much cooler looking cockpit. It just looked more like the cartoon stuff I was watching Speed Racer back then. Under this massive hood was a 6-liter V8. Panoz didn't win much with this car, like no major Le Mans wins. It did finish the 1990 Le Mans, and then when they went to the ALMS series, the following race in the series, they beat this car and this car in 1999. In fact, only two were built. There were only two running models of the Panoz LMP Roadster S at that time, and they won first. They came first and second in the round after Le Mans. I was going to point out one design difference as well. Like, it's just how much more indented and sculpted this design is for these cars as compared to, at least on the toy, what seems like a bit more flattish or vented design on 333 SP, as well as the Riley&Scott, Scott and Riley. Sorry, pardon me, Riley&Scott Mark III. Like, it has the vents to let the air out. This thing was sculpted, sort of cut through the air, and of course the engine layout made a huge difference. Rear mid mounted, front mid mounted almost possibly, because it would probably be behind the front axle. Side port exhaust, completely different weight balance. So yeah, later in that season in 1999, it did get a lot of podium places, and then because of that consistency of podiums, if not wins, it was able to win that championship ahead of the BMW V12 LMRs. Unfortunately, I don't have a model of that BMW V12. Look at the detailing on the cockpit of this one. See the stick shift, the steering wheel, sort of the racing seat harness. Let's see what seems like a bit of a electrical ECU control box next to the driver. Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite LMP cars as a grown-up. And you can see Panoz's logo sort of painted on there, a bit off-center, but still a nice detail. The only kind of major win it had in the following year was at the 6 Hours of Nürburgring, which was then known as the 1,000 kilometers of Nürburgring. So that's pretty impressive. This thing has won a WEC event at Nürburgring, so that's something to say for itself. Panoz then worked on a replacement, like an evolution, which they called the Panoz LMP 07, but it just did not deliver any results. Like, it sucked. Furious is in. They were just like, let's just go back to the Roadster. We know what to do with it. It's worked for us before. Let's make it run a little bit longer. And then around 2002, they brought out the LMP01 Evo. But unfortunately, that car also did not enjoy much success, as around that time, Audi was just killing it. Like, they were dominating WEC races left, right, and center. And for those who have somewhat followed that format of racing since, Audi and Porsche have been the two most dominant forces of the 21st century in endurance racing. But yeah, these three were the precursors. You had the 333 SP, the Riley&Scott, and then the Panoz LMP Roadster. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know what you think of these kind of videos, because I enjoy making them. I love telling the story behind these Hot Wheels that as kids we just happy to go boom 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 with. But as an adult, as a car guy, you kind of like go into the history of it. You respect the detailing, the work that Hot Wheels put in to make these toys accessible and worth collecting, and the build quality, especially compared to today's models. I'm so happy with the build quality of the old school Hot Wheels. Subscribe if you wanna be notified of any new stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.